Star Trek: The Last Starship writers tease a brand new take on the franchise. For almost 6 decades, Star Trek has reinvented itself time and again on television, in movies, in animation, in experimental shorts, and even in unexpected comedic formats. But according to the writers behind Star Trek: The Last Starship, the next major evolution of the franchise is about to arrive, and it may be the boldest departure yet. Billed as a brand new take on the Trek universe, the upcoming series aims to carve out a tonal, visual, and narrative identity unlike anything the franchise has attempted before, while still honoring the principles that turned Gene Roddenberry's utopian vision into a global phenomenon. At a time when the Star Trek universe is in a transitional moment, with Strange New Worlds surging, Discovery concluding, and Prodigy gaining momentum, The Last Starship is positioned as the next flagship Trek show. And if early comments from the creative team are any indication, this series won't just extend the franchise's legacy. It might fundamentally reshape the direction of Trek storytelling for the next decade. A new era demands a new kind of Trek. According to the writer's room, The Last Starship was born from a challenge: create a Trek show that appeals to longtime fans and entices an audience that has never seen a warp core, a tricorder, or a Vulcan nerve pinch. Rather than another prequel or mid-era sequel, the writers say the new series pushes the timeline forward in meaningful, story-driven ways. It marks the franchise's most significant chronological leap since Star Trek: Picard. One writer described the central premise as greater than a story about what you do when everything you thought you understood about the galaxy, its alliances, its enemies, its technologies, suddenly stops working. That sentence alone has already set fan speculation ablaze. Will this series depict a breakdown of warp infrastructure, the collapse of the Federation's borders, a new, powerful cosmic scale threat, or perhaps something more introspective, an existential shift in how the Federation sees itself? While the writers remain coy, they emphasize that The Last Starship explores a galaxy on the brink of reinvention, using the Starship and its crew as the catalyst for rebuilding hope, trust, and unity. Brand new take doesn't mean breaking with tradition. Whenever a new Trek series emerges, a familiar debate follows. How far can it stray from the formula before it stops feeling like Star Trek? The writers of The Last Starship insist that while they're reinventing the aesthetic and narrative structure, the soul remains intact. Expect exploration at the core, but in places the Federation has never dared to enter. A diverse crew with ideological differences reminiscent of Deep Space Nine's textured storytelling. Moral dilemmas over pew-pew action, though the show will feature the most cinematic starship sequences Trek has ever seen on television. Optimism, tempered by the reality that the galaxy doesn't always bend toward peace without a struggle. One writer framed it beautifully. Greater than, we're not ignoring canon. We're responding to it. The Federation has changed, and so has the universe. The show asks how Starfleet evolves when the future refuses to behave. This approach suggests a new blend of legacy-driven world-building and fresh, character-centered narrative arcs, something closer to the thematic density of DS9 combined with the modern pacing of Strange New Worlds. A starship like none before, every Trek series with Starship in the title inevitably sparks excitement about the vessel itself, and The Last Starship is no exception. While the writers haven't revealed the ship's name, leading fans to refer to it as LS-01, they describe it as a prototype with experimental systems, a vessel designed for a mission Starfleet can't publicly acknowledge, a ship running with a skeleton crew during its earliest episodes, Starfleet's most agile and smallest long-range vessel in decades. This is a far cry from the sprawling, quasi-city starships like the Enterprise D or Voyager. Instead, the writers hint the ship's modest scale will force the crew to rely more on ingenuity and cooperation than on technological convenience. One teased, greater than, it's the first time in modern Trek where the ship feels like both a lifeline and a liability. Expect something closer to the claustrophobic tension of submarine Trek episodes like Balance of Terror, The Die is Cast, or Discovery's earliest episodes, blended with the frontier scrappiness that defined the original Enterprise and X-01. A crew that didn't ask for this mission, unlike TNG or Voyager, where crews board their ships with purpose and pride, The Last Starship flips the formula. The writers say many crew members did not choose their assignments. or transferred abruptly due to political circumstances, hold conflicting philosophies about the Federation's current direction, question whether the mission itself is ethical. This opens the door for a series that begins with tension, trust issues, and fractured alliances, then slowly forms a family through hardship rather than immediate camaraderie. One writer compared the dynamic to greater than a group of brilliant people stuck on the same lifeboat during a storm no one planned for. This direction also positions the show to explore themes of duty, loyalty, and identity in ways Trek hasn't tackled since DS9's Dominion War arcs. Tone, grittier, but not grimdark. Trek has always walked a delicate line regarding tone. It's not meant to be gloomy or cynical, but neither can it feel naively idealistic in a galaxy with such complex moral and political realities. The last Starship team says the tone aims for high-stakes tension without sacrificing wonder, emotional realism rather than melodrama, an atmosphere where every discovery has weight, dark moments punctuated by genuine humor and humanity. A writer put it succinctly. Greater than, we don't want grimdark Trek, we want grown-up Trek, about people who carry the burden of hope even when hope is fragile. This tonal balance suggests a show that fits comfortably between the brightness of Strange New Worlds and the heavy serialized drama of Picard's later seasons. The writer's main goal: surprise the audience, respectfully. One of the most striking elements from the writer's comments is their commitment to surprising viewers. They claim the pilot episode includes a major subversion of a classic Trek trope, a twist involving Starfleet history, a first contact scene unlike anything Trek has attempted, and a final act that will make longtime fans sit up straight. The writers insist none of these twists are meant to shock for shock's sake. Instead, each revelation is designed to expand the scope of the universe while still grounded in Trek logic. They have also hinted at a new type of alien species with unique biological physics, a political crisis inside the Federation, a technological malfunction that reshapes the season's arc. In short, they want each episode to feel unpredictable without betraying the Trek ethos. A love letter to Trek's legacy, but not a nostalgia machine. In recent years, some Trek productions have been criticized for leaning too heavily on nostalgia, winks, references, legacy characters, returning ships, and so on. But the last Starship writers promise a different approach. Minimal cameo appearances, no reliance on familiar species for easy storytelling, an entirely new region of space, fresh lore instead of retreading old ground. You'll still feel Trek's DNA in the relationships, the ethics, the sense of adventure, and the intellectual curiosity, but not necessarily in the form of Easter eggs or throwback storylines. As one writer said, greater than, we want fans to feel the way they did the first time they saw the Enterprise jump to warp, not because they recognized something, but because they believed something. Why the last Starship could become the next defining Trek series if the writers deliver on their ambition. This show could do for the franchise what Deep Space Nine did in the 90s or what Strange New Worlds is currently doing, redefining what modern Trek is capable of. Here's why the future looks bright. 1. It expands the timeline instead of repeating the past. This gives the show freedom, and Trek hasn't had true narrative freedom for a while. 2. It leans into a strong ensemble cast with built-in conflict. Audiences love watching incompatible personalities learn to trust each other. 3. It prioritizes sensory immersion and cinematic storytelling. The writers say the show will use visual,